Welcome everybody, guests, speakers, my wife, my technical assistants, to another, there's Dr. Keith Levins, my buddy. Hi, Keith. Welcome to all of you on this very, very special show podcast that we have today about the title of it, which is Seeing Beyond Our Differences. And I can't think of a better day than Election Day to be talking about this. In the United States, it's Election Day. And, one of the, I just want to read a real quick, short quote from the beginning of by the way, this is, my new book arrived last week. Yay! It'll be out next week in the US and the month after in the UK. But in this we're going to talk about today is in chapter 12 of the book, Seeing Beyond Our Differences and Finding Connection in a Divided World. And in the beginning of the chapter, I have a quote from Sid Banks from The Missing Link, and it goes, "With wisdom, people see beyond the filters and biases of race and culture to realize the beauty in everyone. Wisdom applied to society would do more than anything else to halt ethnic clashes and the wars the world suffers from today." And it's not just in ethnic differences, it's political differences, it's age differences, it's religion, ideology. There's the ways that we define ourselves, the thoughts that we identify with as who we are is just scratching the surface of who we are. We're not our thought systems. We're not our beliefs. We're who made it all up. We're who creates it moment to moment. And another thing Sid often said, that humanity will never solve its problems until the consciousness of the world changes. And what did he mean by consciousness? It's to be conscious, to be aware, to be awake. When we're living consciously, we have an immunity to propaganda, to all that fills our lives with the internet, our ways that we get divided on we're in our little blocks right now, but people begin to identify with their tribe, with their belief system. And so many times I've noticed in conversation with people, as soon as people say they're of this party or that religion or that, a little like a shield goes up of prejudice, prejudgment. I wonder if they would. I can't talk about this, or I can't talk about that, or I wonder if they're thinking this. And lucky for me, I'm conscious that that's just my belief system kicking up, that that's just a thought going through my mind. And when I see that shield goes down and I'm able to listen beyond my beliefs and their beliefs, beyond our differences, to the common humanity that we all share as human beings. We're all one in that universal mind. There's no separation. There's only love and understanding. And when we realize that, as many of you on this call and the people who will be sharing today will talk about, that as we began to realize our own thinking getting in the way of being able to connect to other people, to relate, that it transformed our lives. And sharing this with other people, Jerry Williams, who's a former police officer from Oakland, California, worked very closely with Beverly Wilson, who we had on the very first podcast. He'll be sharing with us about his work in community policing and how the understanding of the three principles when he met Beverly and the work that she and he were doing in the projects in Oakland, how that changed them first personally, and then how that rippled out to the residents who are of all different races, different creeds, different beliefs, and how that brought unity to those communities. Mavis Karn, our second guest who's with us today, my buddy, just practically a stone's throw across the river from me here in Minnesota, who had the privilege of working with Mavis for the last 150 years, I think it's been, at the Minneapolis Institute of Mental Health and doing training programs together. And Mavis has so many wonderful stories to share about her experiences working in juvenile jails, in other prisons, communities of color, and just human beings in general. Just a wonderful soul, wonderful friend, wonderful spirit. And Judy Sedgeman, another dear friend who's recently flown the coop. Most people fly south for the winter, but Judy decided to fly north and join her daughter. And is it Philadelphia or Pittsburgh? Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, up north there on the East Coast somewhere.
Yeah.
Judy's in her new digs, as you see behind her, having just arrived in Pennsylvania. And Judy is a remarkable speaker, writer. She's just written a new book also.
Yep.
You can maybe tell us a little bit about that. And has worked in healthcare and with businesses and organizations in just infinite fields, because the principles apply to everything. And those of us who've been blessed enough to learn these principles find that our lives take us into every culture, every possible profession imaginable, to help us see how to help others see beyond their differences, whether it's in medicine or police work, working with firefighters, whatever profession. So we're in store for a real treat today to listen to these three folks talk about seeing beyond our differences. So, Judy, would you like to go for, or anyone feel inspired to go first?
If you'd like me to, I'll be happy to.
Yeah, well, you were just happened to be where my eyes went. So
be sitting there. Yeah.
I know you have no trouble speaking, so I'll just hand it over to you.
Yeah, well, as you were talking, I was thinking, that the idea of our differences being extremely important has arisen in the last few years. But from the beginning of my experience with the principles, way back in, I guess the first exposure I ever had was like 1984. I realized that was a really key learning, to realize, because I was working with people that were always at odds with other people. And I don't need to go into the details. I was in business and I was running a medical practice management company, and I negotiated deals on behalf of my clients and worked with hospital administrators and other practices trying to merge or divide or whatever they're trying to do. So I was kind of working in a world of conflict. And I was taking it seriously. And this seems to me to be a very important point. I was taking it seriously because I thought that conflict was real. I thought, that when people disagree with each other, that it's meaningful and you have to solve the content of the disagreement. And when I first learned the principles, the first thing I saw is, no, you don't have to solve the content of the disagreement. You have to solve the fact that people are attached to the content and don't realize that they're making it up. You have to get deeper than the ideas that they're hanging on to the fact that they could think anything, and that their power to change is inside them. They don't have to change the deal or other people. They have to change from within to become connected, to see that everybody's doing the same thing in the room. And, that was such a huge, it changed everything for me, actually. I was trying to get out of my business because I was sick and tired of all this arguing and, lawsuits and lawyers and accountants. And all of a sudden, it all just disappeared. And instead, I was working with clients who were interested in other people and curious about how this was going to work out, and coming together in a whole different state of mind that allowed them to start fresh when they were, instead of coming into the room saying, okay, I want this, and if I don't get this, I'm out of here. They would come in wondering what was going to happen. And, that was just earth shattering for me. And it really changed the whole trajectory of my work with business for years, because that's mostly what I did. Now I work with all kinds of people and things and businesses and entities. But so as I guess in the course of my life, more and more, I've seen deeper and deeper that the whole key to life is unconditional, is to be in a state of unconditional appreciation, for the very fact that we're here together, and unconditional love for life and for other people and for whatever is in front of you, and not come in, with an idea in mind. Just come in with the idea that we're going to create something together. And it's a miracle to me that I changed enough, even in the beginning, to be able to get my clients to move in that direction. And most of the time my clients got way ahead of me, because the feeling of it was so much better than what they usually spent their time doing. That is very easy. And I realized that too, that when people fall into a beautiful feeling with each other and lose that I'm separate, kind of arms crossed thing, when they fall into a beautiful feeling together, miracles happen. Amazing things come out of it. So, in the story that I told in the book, in your book, Joe, is about a neighbor. It was about, we liked each other, and then we found out that we were in two different political arenas. and our first instinct, my first instinct was, I'm not gonna be able to talk to her anymore, at least not until after, that was before the election. This election is over. And then I thought, no, that's silly. Those are just thoughts we have, and she's a beautiful person, and I'm a good person, and we can still be friends. And I found that we could even talk about our politics she didn't change her mind and I didn't change my mind, but I would say that we had a pleasant disagreement. She wasn't angry. She wasn't hateful. She didn't decide that I was, a child's blood drinker or something. She just saw that nice people that she liked might disagree with her about things, and it was okay. And I thought that was really beautiful. Mm. But so that's kind of, I think I may have almost used my time up, but I wanted to.
You're good. You're good.
I wanted to say one more little story about a neighbor. Before there was any politics involved in my neighborhood, I lived catty corner across the street from this woman that everybody said, don't go near her house. She's just horrible. She yells at you. She's bitchy. She's unpleasant. And she's just impossible. So I walked my dog every day, and my dog was very drawn to her lawn. It was like the first lawn we came to when we left the house. And if you have a dog, you know what that means. So, and she would come storming out of the house and say, don't let your dog pee on my grass. Pull that dog out of there. He's going to make the grass all yellow. And God knows if he did anything else, she would just have a fit, even though I plastic bags and everything.
What kind of a fit, Judy?
Yeah, like she's jumping up and down, screaming at the dog, you filthy beast. I mean, she said stuff like that. And so I thought, this is really kind of an overreaction to a little dog. There's something else going on here. And everybody hates her, and she doesn't like anybody. And I thought that must be a terrible feeling to live in. So I started taking the dog around the other way, so that by the time we got her to her house, he wasn't going to do anything, and I would just be walking by, and she was always peering out. She was one of those people, and she'd come out the door. And I said to her, I said, have you lived here long? Because I just had moved in not too long before that. She said, yeah, a couple of miserable years. And as we got into conversation, I mean, she was just so angry, and she had, and mostly about people walking their dogs. So I said, gosh, did you ever have a pet? Because it just occurred to me, and she started to cry. I mean, really big tears, and she said, yeah, I did. And I said, what was it? And she said, oh, it's a little Cocker Spaniel. And I said, what happened to your pet? And she said, he was run over and he's gone. and I'll never be able to love another dog. And she's like weeping. And I said, I am so very sorry to hear that. I said, I know that pets are like members of your family. And then she told me that her husband had died just a few months before, and her dog was her only friend, and how lonely she was. And she just poured her heart out.
Yeah.
And I just went over to her and I held her hand, and I said, I'm so, so sorry. And I really, I'd love to be your friend. And, you don't have to be afraid. I'll be careful with my dog. I promise you, I won't let anything happen to your lawn. And she said, well, I don't know. And then she kind of fled into the house. So the next day when I came around, she comes out and she says, do you like blueberry muffins? And I said, oh yeah, I love them. And she said, well, I just made some. And she brought me a plate with 2 little blueberry muffins covered in a pretty napkin and handed it to me. And she said, if you haven't had your coffee yet, enjoy them while they're warm. So I went home and enjoyed them. And then I wrote her a little note, so things started. So now she turned into this really friendly person, but she was only friendly to me because she was still afraid of everybody else. And then she moved away. And when her daughter came to sell the place, her daughter came over to my house and she said, my mother told me that you were her only friend here, the only person that was nice to her. Now, I really wasn't the only person that tried to be nice to her, but I hung in there. Other people got discouraged. Again, because when we look at other people, we say, well, they are who they are. They think what they think. The woman's a bitch, the heck with her. And I just have learned in life, you don't give up on people. You just don't, because deep down inside, there's always something much more sweet and much more loving that just, they're either hiding it or they're disguising it or they're afraid to express it. And love will bring it out. Love always brings love. So.
Oh, that's a beautiful story, Judy. But what I loved about that, in that common thread, is at some point you saw your shield go up, everything that you heard about this woman,
right.
And there was the evidence. She was being crabby to you.
Right.
But then it was like there was a realization moment, which is what consciousness is.
Yeah.
Consciousness came in and helped you see your own prejudice, your own thinking, preconceived notions about her. Mm-hmm. And when you saw that, your feeling changed from offensive to this empathy. I just felt so much empathy from you.
Yeah.
And that's just, it seems so simple.
Yeah, that we have to change to see how to change the relationship. Yeah. That's beautiful, Joe. Thank you.
But that if you multiply that example times how many billion people there are on this planet, imagine the transformation that would occur.
Right.
It's just seeing beyond it's not seeing beyond our differences, it's really seeing beyond our thinking about the differences.
Right.
So thank you, Judy, for that. That was just such a great illustration. Jerry or Mavis, you want to go next?
Okay, I guess I'll go.
Hey, Jerry.
All right.
Different than the last time I saw you in your police officer uniform.
Yeah, yes, that was the whole idea. The whole idea. It brings me to a teaching that I did in the schools. After I learned, well, let me start from the beginning. They asked me, the brass, wanted me to do this thing called community policing. And I advised them that I didn't know what community policing was. They said, well, you establish rapport and friendship with the community. And I said, oh, okay, how do I do that? And they gave me a list of maybe 10 things, and those 10 things was what I was already doing. So how the change is going to come about if I'm doing the same thing I've been doing? They said, you'll figure it out. At that time, Roger Mills was conducting a workshop down in East Oakland, across the street from Coliseum and Lockwood Gardens. And that's what my assignment was going to be, because they selected it as the most violent neighborhood in the country, fourth, that is, in the country, as far as homicide and violent crimes. So I went to the meeting with Roger he was given. I didn't know Roger at the time. And I noticed there were about 70 policemen there. So we was all there for the first day, and we didn't understand a word he was saying. So it was a 3-day workshop. And the second day, there was maybe about 15 policemen. And the last day of his workshop, there was only myself. But I was more curious as to how did he make this change in Modelo? So he brought one of the officers down there who hadn't went through the training, but he saw what happened there. So I said, something's about this. So anyway, I went to Coliseum Garden across the street in Lockwood Gardens, and they would just happen to have a residence meeting. And Beverly Wilson was, at the time, Wilson was conducting training there. And the people there were some of the people that I've arrested in the past. And so they asked me, what am I doing there in uniform? And I felt out of place. And they said that you're not welcome here. And so why don't you go to the one where Beverly's teaching? And I made a mistake. I said Beverly was the first one, but she wasn't. It was some other organization. So I went to Coliseum Garden where Beverly was teaching. And I figured that I was going to get the same reception from the community. But when I got in there, they were just as quiet and attentive to what she was saying. And I wasn't. She was teaching 3 principles to them. A lot of them had been in this workshop for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and they were catching on to it. And I'm figuring out, why am I not catching on to this like they are? So anyway, I asked Doc. He said, well, Jerry, you're doing too much thinking, so you have to slow down your thinking and go from there. So needless to say, after receiving this training for about 18 months, I started to change without realizing that. Now, the good thing about these principles is that you change naturally. Even I didn't know I was changing, but people around me saw the change in me. And it was definitely for the good. So based on that, I said, wait a minute. I'm here to do a job to reduce crime, to establish rapport with the community. And the best way I can do it, I can't change this community, but I can change myself easier than I can this community. And when the community saw me changing, they changed. They looked at me differently. So I would do things like teach school over across the street there, out of uniform now. Even the students didn't know who I was. And I would do the training in the principles over there to the young kids. I'll teach them about things about the 3 principles. And I was really gravitated to the innate factor of the principles, and that everything is good comes from within. And we used to have not workshop, but we used to have drills. Like I would ask the students, like, what makes you angry? And you hear things like, well, what makes me angry is my mother lied to me, or my friend talked about me, or I was being bullied, and so on and so forth. And I got them to realize the fact that that all these things that was angry was upsetting them were from the outside, and that they have things, the enhanced quality within ourselves are all good. So what they had to do is try to reach that plateau of realizing that, hey, this innate quality within me is all good. In other words, it's the spirit, it's the God gift. I used to tell the elementary kids that they would ask me, what is innate? I said, okay, innate is something that's given to you at birth. no one never taught you how to smile or laugh. Is that true? They said, yeah, that's true. So I said, that's innate. So after realizing that I had them receiving the principles, after about a month later, on the last day of the workshop, I would come in there as a test in uniform, full uniform, the gun, the mace, and the baton, and all that stuff, thinking they were going to get upset because the stories I heard prior to that was like they hated policemen, they didn't like them, they arrested their parents, and they arrested their uncles and things like that. So when I came in there, I was expecting the worst. But when they saw me, they were shocked. And I believe it or not, for about 10 seconds, because my whole idea was to get them to see beyond the badge and the uniform, but the person inside it, so that they wouldn't judge. And the last 10 seconds, and we was talking like we were all good friends again. They didn't see the uniform, they didn't see the badge, they didn't see the cop. They saw within ourselves. And we did things like we would take popsicle sticks and make put a sun on one popsicle stick and a cloud on another, and show them that the sun is always shining behind the clouds. They really resonated with that. It sounded corny, but it resonated with that, because after that, I would come to the school and I would see the kids, the students carrying the popsicle sticks with them, knowing that there's always sunshine behind these clouds. So I thought that was so beautifully. It made me excited. And that was part of my change in this whole approach. And when I would try to instruct them, and I would teach them, even I had an opportunity to teach the officers there on the principles. And it's always the third day that they looking for it, and they finally get it. Some of them do. And, they have come out with like this one particular captain in, never forget, in Key West, Florida, said, okay, Jerry, what you want us to do? Hug them, then cuff them? I said, no, that doesn't make sense. What you do is you cuff them, then hug them, So, so we got a laugh out of that. And if for that moment there, establish, a rapport with them. Needs to say, in that community that I was referring to, I haven't got that much time, crime went down. The residents there they empowered themselves, and they felt really good about themselves. So they changed the community. I mean, they knew what the problems were, and they also knew how to solve it. So what they did was, and you probably heard about it, they put warning signs. They told me, Jerry, put warning signs on them. We know who they are. I got their mugshots, so I put the mugshots on the wanted signs and paste them all over the community. And this warning sign said, wanted out of the community, by the community. Now that says a lot, because these four gentlemen came into my office. My office was right there in the middle of the community, and said, okay, Jerry, take the signs down and we'll leave. I said, nope, it's up to the community. So I have to meet with them again. So I met with them, and they said, nope, don't take them down. And all this was based on the principles. They learned about the thought cycle. They learned about the innate qualities everybody have. And they felt good about that. I just can't get enough of that, the innate qualities, because even doing lineups, they used to tell us about a certain individual we're looking for, and to describe him doing lineup sound like a monster, and I was looking for the good in everybody, and I was getting good at it. It was easy for me to find so-called dirt on people, but it was more challenging and rewarding to find the good in people. And when you go out there with these monsters, so-called monsters, you do see the good in them. They are human. And I was so happy to see that from my perspective. And they also resonated with me in seeing that. And I would tell them back in the police car, I said, you know what? You're not a bad person. Just, it sounds so corny, you know, even when I said it. But years and years later, I would see them and their family in the mall or somewhere, and they would say, hey, Jerry, remember that time you arrested me and you said I was a good guy? Well, here's my family, here's my wife, and he's doing good. You know, and that made me feel so good, and that was so rewarding. And I was so thankful for that. And then other things came up, such as they called me the lollipop cop because I carried candy. I had to carry candy in my trunk to give to the kids so we can chit chat around the patrol car. And we really enjoyed that. And the parents became interested as to what we was talking about. So they came out there and wanted candy, and they sat there. And before you know it, you know, they're saying things that, you know, makes them uncomfortable in the community that they lived in, you know. So I became a true public servant. In other words, I understood truly that I was a public servant. I worked for them. Mm-hmm. Somehow it got switched around, you know. Yeah. And but we're servants. We're the public servants. So anything they suggest, that's what we do. You know, even to the point where arresting people, they would tell me who needs to go and who needs to stay, you know. And they saw that as empowerment. It empowered them as well. Yeah. So, you know, it is so much I can tell you.
Jerry, all over the board here. Your story is so inspiring. You're just amazing. You know, I wish we had the full hour to hear everything. Oh. But mm-hmm. Jerry's very humble. But Jerry's work and Miss Beverly together, not only was it incredible in each of these people's lives, but the city of Oakland noticed that and recommended Jerry for the California Peace Award, in which he won for his work and Beverly's work in Oakland and Lockwood Gardens, and eventually went to the White House with then President Jimmy Carter, not Jimmy Carter, but Bill Clinton, and received recognition there. So you truly are a community police officer, Jerry. You may have been called that, but now you embody it. And
right.
Thank you for your service so much, and such an example to other police officers. God, I wish.
I do too. I know what you got to say.
Every police officer in America, and you could tell those stories.
Yes. Wow. You know, the main thing is that since crime was so rampant there, they had no homicides when I was there in 15 years, not one. And you used to have one almost every day. That was the miracle of that place. Violent crimes went down as well. So we got, as a result, we was given $25 million to revamp the place, you know, like tear down the high rise and put up, I guess, townhouses. Mm-hmm.
Homes.
Yes, homes. Yeah. Homes, actually homes. Some residents moved out and bought their own house. They were that empowered. Mm-hmm. Wow. It was pretty good. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But thank you, Jerry.
You're welcome. Yeah. My pleasure.
Mm-hmm. Yay. Maybe hard act to follow her, but I know you can. She's the cleanup batter, as they say during the World Series.
Okay. Man, you are a hard act to follow, Jerry. You're just awesome. I share with Jerry a love of teaching what we teach to kids. Mm-hmm. And one of the stories about that is in Joe's book, but there was another one I thought you might like hearing. When I would go down to a prison for kids, which is about an hour south of my home, and every Sunday for 2 years and teach classes. And one day in one of the classes, there was a new kid that came from Chicago. He lived in what was called Cabrini Green, which was a public housing place. Turned into a disaster. anyway, that's where he was from. And I introduced him to the class. There were about, I don't know, 15, 20 kids in the class. And I introduced him. And I'm going to call him Robbie. And I asked him if he wanted to tell the class anything about himself. And there's nothing Robbie liked more than talking. So he told his story. And that he had grown up in Cabrini Green. And one day he came home, he was about 10. And his mother and his siblings were gone. The apartment was empty. He had no idea what happened. And he asked around and nobody knew where they were. And he'd never seen them again. He was now 17. And he raised himself for 10 years. He slept here and there and got put in prison several times, in and out. But his story was that he was left behind because he was a bad kid. That was just a matter-of-fact part of the story. And he got done with his story, and I was about to say something about this bad kid thing, and the kid next to me said to him, Robbie, your mama didn't leave you because you was no bad kid. She left you because she didn't know how to be no good mama.
Yeah. Wow.
And I want to tell you about this group of kids. There was probably every color and size and shape born to man in this room. Asian, African American, Native American, white, so on. And when that kid said that about his mom, they all agreed to that. They all agreed that was the problem. And that he was going to learn that there was nothing wrong with him. He did some bad things, but that didn't mean there was anything wrong with him. And that's what they were all learning. And he should be glad he ended up in prison here, because he was going to leave knowing who he was. I didn't say a thing. Not a thing. Not too long after that, Sid Banks was in town. And some of us went out to lunch with him. And I guess he had heard that I'd been spending some time in prisons. And he was sitting next to me and he said, tell me stories. I thought, stories? I don't know any stories. And he said, what was it like? What was it like with those kids? So I told him that story because I was amazed at these kids. I mean, I had high hopes for these kids, but that was a low bar compared to what had happened to them. So I told him that story, and I must have told him in kind of a matter-of-fact way, because he reached over and he put his hand on my arm and he said, don't ever get used to the miracles, dearie.
No.
And that's the first time I saw what could happen. That was, excuse me, that was way better than anything I had imagined. That these kids like that went way beyond me. And it's lucky that happened, because every time somebody goes beyond us, we learn from them.
Right.
And I'm 82 years old and I'm still learning a mile a minute. So don't ever quit, folks.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be seen that you missed.
Mavis, would you tell the other part of that story that you told Sid about the kids that came to the aftercare kind of recidivism prevention program group that you did? and they were all from different gangs. Could you tell that?
The one in the book?
Yeah.
Okay, but I'll probably cry again.
That's okay.
Oh no, you can't, that's not allowed, Mavis. Here.
And I am on the wrong show. So part of the project was that I would meet with the kids once they got out on parole too, and so there was a conference room in my office building, and I had about 15, 20 kids there, I guess, and same mixture, it's like a garden with all kinds of wildflowers in it, and I was about to start the meeting, and one of the kids said, "Gee, can I talk?" And they called me G, and they called me G because that means original gangster, and I didn't know that. I thought it meant old grandmother or something.
Did they start the new TV show about the OG after you, Mavis?
No. Anyway, so this kid, he's about 17, I guess, and he starts around the room and he starts naming each kid and their gang affiliation. Mm-hmm. Now, I knew the kids' names, but what do I know about gang affiliations? I'm not, I'm just me. So he went around and he named everybody and their gang affiliation. And then he paused a minute and he said, it used to be that all of you were my enemies. But now I have love for all of you in my heart.
Oh.
And once again, I'm just like, what? And I kind of expected the kids to start giggling or something. You get a bunch of boys together and somebody says something sweet and they all say, well, whatever. But they didn't do that. They started talking about what the world would be like if everybody knew what they knew. Mm. That there wouldn't be any wars. They decided together that there would be gangs, but there would be gangs for good. Mm-hmm. They would do good things. They would help children. They would spend their lives helping one another. Mm-hmm. I still kind of don't know what to say about that, but afterwards, they all got up and just were trying to figure out which pizza store they were going to go to have lunch. Mm. I'm telling you, this work is really educational for the people trying to do it. Mm-hmm.
Humbling.
Yes.
Boy, you just never know when somebody's going to take a flying leap right past you.
Yeah.
And you want to see where they go and follow.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful demonstration that everyone is born with innate mental health, resilience, pure spirit, and it just needs to be awakened. It needs to be pointed out or seen by someone to, like the woman Judy was talking about, the cranky neighbor. Mm-hmm. She just needed a little bit of love on her parched earth to bring out her humanity and for your empathy to become her friend. And that's always available. And the principles have always been around forever, long before Sid Banks ever discovered the principles, but and throughout time, our humanity has shown, the principles have shown themselves in love and understanding and healing and wars ending and people falling in love and et cetera, et cetera. But it's my hope that not just my book, but there's hundreds of books on the three principles, getting out in the world will be the key that unlocks that empathy and that clears the divisions that right now so plague us. So I thank all three of you for, God, you guys are all just like knocked it out of the park. Holy smokes. But I'd like to open it up to the larger group now, if that's all right, unless any of the three of you have anything else you want to say. I'd love to have a conversation about this and what stories you yourself have, or questions that you have of any of the three, of Mavis or Jerry or Judy. You can just raise your hand. If you go down to the reactions on the very bottom of your screen there, you'll see a hand on the left-hand side, and you just click that. I'll put one up for me. And so Debbie has her hand up. Go ahead, Debbie.
My heart is just overflowing right now. It's just so beautiful, every one of your stories. And I think for me, the biggest connection that I heard in all of those stories and seen in my own work is the ability to listen, the ability to be present with another human being, no matter the age, no matter the crime, no matter the behaviors, but that common humanity of being present with someone and seeing beneath the circumstances is such a profound gift. And it gives me so much joy and so much hope when I listen to all of you. And Mavis, I have the gift of tears too. So as you were sharing, I was crying with you. We've seen this a couple of times in the school-based programs that we've done. The area that I was working in the most was actually a higher income area. So after working in inner cities for many years, I thought, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake. These kids are great. Oh boy, when you sit down and you're present with them and you start to listen, and, daddy's in jail for the third time for embezzlement, and, daddy's beating up mommy, and, I'm on my fifth daddy. The pain was the same, no matter the living conditions. It just looked a little prettier on the outside. Mm-hmm. But I'll never forget it. It was about 2 years ago, and I had worked in the school system maybe 15 years ago. So I'm in CVS, and this young man is pierced from head to toe, all tattooed, and he keeps staring at me. And I just smile, and he just keeps staring at me. And all of a sudden he goes, "Miss Debbie, is that you?" And I said, "Yeah, it is." He goes, "Do you remember me? I was in your peace circles when I was 5 years old." He goes, "I still remember what you told me and what a difference it made." So did I do anything that special? No, but I was present. I was able to listen. I was able to show them something within them that no one else had showed them before. And then 2 years ago, my team and I were in an inner city school, and we had started a program where we were teaching the kids to teach the other kids these principles. And the group was about 5 kids who were pulled out as being great listeners, good communicators, and we brought them in, and one of our facilitators, someone from my team, just had this nudge to ask anyone if they've ever been suicidal. And this one kid stood up and he burst into tears. He goes, "I've never told anybody this before." And the wisdom in my teammate, she said, "Anybody else in the room?" Mm-hmm. And everyone, including the facilitators, raised their hands. And this 11-year-old didn't feel so alone.
Wow.
And
then we were able to share with him that, you know what, a suicidal thought, everybody gets them once in a while when you're overwhelmed. It's an overwhelmed thought that you can't live like this anymore. But look, you didn't act on it. And you know what? You don't have to act on it when that comes up. go get some love. Go talk to someone who, you know will listen to you and love on you. And it just took all the shame out of it. And that's what I heard from all of you today, was that you don't have to be ashamed, and when we bring our own humanity to connect with someone else's love and humanity, what a beautiful gift. So thank you guys so, so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Debbie.
Much. That's beautiful.
One of our former podcast speakers, Debbie. Thank you. Anybody else want to make a comment or share or question? Yes, Rolf.
You're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Hi, Rolf.
Hi there. Hi, everybody. Nice to see some familiar faces, people that I love. I'm just really struck by the timeliness of what we're pointing to here. The world desperately needs a deepening understanding of where human experience comes from. I'm reminded of one of my clients who I was speaking with just a few weeks ago. He's the CEO of a global company and a leader with tremendous promise. He's being encouraged to consider running for prime minister of his country. And at the end of one of our coaching sessions, I could tell something was troubling him. And I asked him what it was. And he paused for a long moment. And then he said, I don't know what to do about the divisiveness in the world. There's so much mean-spiritedness that sometimes I feel overwhelmed by it. And the beautiful thing is that we actually have access to the answer to that question. And that's a question that millions of people are asking around the world right now. And I was so gratified to hear a leader of this quality asking that question. So I just feel really grateful that there are people like all of you in the world, and that there are books being written like Joe's new book. It's exactly what we need. In fact, I think I'm going to send that book to this client of mine. It just occurred to me that this would be a lovely time to send it to him as an answer to his question.
Would be.
I remember a time last fall before the election when I had gotten into the habit of watching the news daily, and I realized that I was getting increasingly discouraged by the same question that my client asked. By the fact that I was noticing the same thing, and and my mood was dropping, and I was watching this news almost in an addicted way. And I kind of woke up one morning and realized that what I needed to do was stop watching the news and give myself a vacation from all of that concern and worry, and simply focus on my work, which is doing whatever I can to raise consciousness in the world, to deepen human understanding. That's something I can do. And it was such a relief to me to stop focusing on all that I was worried about.
Right.
And to focus on the simple exchanges like Judith shared earlier,
Mhm.
you know, or the exchanges that Mavis described, or Jerry.
It's true.
Thank you for writing this book, Joe.
Thank you, all of you, for helping me write this book. You know, your stories, everybody's, all of the people here have been touched in some way or another, and they're sharing. And I just wanted to have a book that would tell those stories so that people somewhere in there would see themselves, that they too could change. And when you see the breadth of all the stories in the book, from people in Auschwitz in World War II to people in the inner city today, to top Fortune 10 company executives learning the principles, teachers teaching the principles, students learning the principles in schools, and on and on and on and on and on. And Corporal Malcolm Jerry Williams's work, and other police officers around the country. I hope in Minneapolis we can get into the Minneapolis Police Department soon.
So too.
The answer's there. The answer is there, and it's just. I just met with a woman from the Minneapolis Foundation this morning who, all of a sudden, I've been just doing work around the world, and all of a sudden now it's my own community. Here I am. This book's coming out, and perhaps I'll be able to work locally here with the police.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what might happen, but it's so touching to know that we don't personally have something that can help, but we know something that can help. And the way we pass it on is through the living of our own lives. Who else has any other comments?
Hey, Joe, you probably know this, but Sid would have loved your book.
Yeah.
Can I make one comment?
Sure. Hi, Mary.
I'm Mary. Some of you know me, of course. I'm very grateful that I've been listening in to these, and I'm very grateful that I live between Mavis and Joe. I like right between the two of you.
Big sandwich.
And how lucky that Mary Britt here has gotten to know you guys in the last 6 years. But what's kind of interesting for me today is that I texted a friend of mine who I grew up with. We've been in friendship since about 7 years old. And in the last year and a half, we had a falling out, and we have not talked. And and I haven't known how to heal it or what to do about that. But this morning, it just happened. I texted her, she got back to me, and we're going to have a phone call. And I said, well, why don't we just go for a walk? So we are going for a walk in a half an hour. And, just listening to you guys, so I can work on this in my little corner of the world is what I'm knowing. And, Joe, you started off with the oneness. And, right when the pandemic started, I remember Jeff Johnson in a deal saying, about oneness. And I'm like, wow, I really want to learn how to wrap my head around that. And I am getting it. I said, I don't know if I'll ever learn that. And he's like, oh, you will, you might, whatever. But I am more. But I guess what I know now going to this meeting with my friend is that I'm going to listen, and I'm going to not have any agenda, what I need to say to her or any points I need to get across to her. I'm just going to try to, I guess so much to what Bev reminds me of, or it's not Bev, another wonderful, a different Bev, wonderful mentor of mine. But what Mavis says is of the, universal feelings that, and, Jerry touched on that, and we could all relate to Judy's story about that woman. We're not always on the same page at the same time, but the universal feeling, I get it. I get it. So that oneness, if we could only get to more oneness in the world. So I'm going to try to do it in my little corner of the world this afternoon with Tracy. Thank you.
Beautiful.
All right.
That's great. That's beautiful.
We've still got one more minute. Does anyone else have anything they want to share briefly? You're just bursting to share.
Joe,
Yes, Jerry.
There's one thing that gives me hope. I don't know who said it, but it has to do with our thinking. And someone said we're only one thought away from changing the world.
Oh, Sid.
That was Sid?
Mhm.
Yes, that gives me hope.
Yeah.
One thought away from mental health and one thought away from mental illness.
Go your way. But it's nice to know it's still just one thought. It's like not that hard either to move either direction.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well,
Good
this
seeing
is
all of you.
truly
Really
special.
was.
I'm sorry, someone else?
No, I'm just saying it was good seeing everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say how appreciative I am for our three speakers today, Judy, Jerry, Mavis, and you share from such a wonderful depth and a variety of experiences, which again shows the oneness of the principles, that they're universal, that they're what thinks us, they're what feels us, they're what creates all of our experience. And as that, you can't stop this. It's like the cat's out of the bag, as I often say, that this will ripple through humanity.
Mhm.
And
Right.
it's already way beyond anything I ever imagined would happen. At the last conference, there was 38 countries and every continent represented. And we have a guy here from Thailand today. I don't know who else is from another country. You're Tom Maddox. I don't know where you're from. But this is going out in a very organic way. It's not through billboard advertisements. We thought of that at one time. Remember, Keith? Instead, we were going to put up a billboard, the three principles. But it goes out through one spirit touching another spirit, touching another spirit. And it's like one person lights a candle and lights the next person's and the next person's, and pretty soon the whole room is filled with light. So I have a lot of hope for humanity. And Kenny's from Sweden. There, Kenny Ingebrigtsen. I should be able to say that. I'm from Minnesota. We're all But anyway, thank you all for sharing. And Rolf, what you said at the end was beautiful. And thanks to Ann and James for making this all work, because technologically I have not evolved very much.
Okay. You evolved the thing that needed to get involved.
So Ann, our next podcast, is that on business? Am I remembering that right? You're muted.
Yeah, there we go. I muted myself, but yes, I believe so.
Yeah, so Ken Manning, Sandy Crott, and Robin Charbit are going to talk about their work taking this into, Fortune 500 companies with their corporate executives. And that's an amazing, amazing story, because that's touching hundreds of thousands of people. That's amazing. So we'll see you all hopefully in 3 weeks if you're able to make it. And if you can't, you can always listen to this on your favorite podcast.